Good morning and welcome back to Days Post-Apocalyptic World. And this is that Christmas morning we were talking about. So we've printed our first 8 parts for our wire printed Terracotta Warrior. And here they are behind us. And it was actually a great success, the very first print for that project, because as we can see, there was no malfunctions in the 8 Ender 3 Pro 3D printers that we printed with. We even had a couple of close calls. As we can see, 2 of the spools almost ran out, and that almost never happens. I kind of knew they were running low, but I went ahead and did it anyway. But something strange happened also, and I wonder if some of you guys that are more experienced with 3D printed than I am know why this is, but they seem to have kind of popped off or disconnected the wire at almost the same spot, almost as if there's like a safeguard where it doesn't allow you to run out. So please put in the comments below if you know anything about that. I don't think it's a coincidence that both of them did that at the same time. That's kind of weird. So this is part 2 of the Terracotta Warrior wire printing project. Now you could be printing anything from a dinosaur skull or a full skeleton to a statue of yourself if you wanted. And I want to get as many videos of this process as I can before everybody picks up on it. But here is my version of it. So our first step today, we see that there was no malfunction in the printing. So let's go ahead and take these off of the printers and see what that looks like. Okay, so here we are. We've got our 8 parts printed. Now we're going to take them off of the printers. And for this, I use a little spatula that actually comes with our 3D printers. And let's take a look at what we have. So ideally, they'll just kind of come off without any too much coaxing. And so that's perfect when that happens. And this tells me that the leveling was right and that I don't need to make any adjustments with it, and they come right off. Sometimes they stick too much, which tells me that the leveling was off and it was just the nozzle was too close to the platform. But here, okay, so this one sticks a little bit, and this one too. So these have been sitting for maybe even a month since the last time they printed, but so far we've got 6 that are not sticking, and let's see how these 2 are working out here. So we take our little spatula, and these come with platforms that are magnetized. And let's see if we can get these off. So as we can tell, there's a little bit of sticking there, which tells me that we're going to re-level these before the next printing run. That's what that means. But it came off perfectly. And even though they can kind of come apart, we can fix this with the next step with the 3D printing pen. So that's fine, that's no problem. It's actually really impressive how there's a flat spot or 2 spots on each part, and yet it didn't sag. So the 3D printing still worked. So we'll take this one off the printer. So these 2 stuck a little bit, and so we'll do a special re-leveling after this part. So now we've got our 8 parts. And if we were printing more than 8 parts, I would like to keep these on their own separated platform so we don't get too confused. So this was a success for our first printing run. And we'll take these to the next step. And while we're at it, we're actually going to take out our 8 little cards and get ready for the next printing run as well. Really, kitty? Okay, so here's our 8 parts that we printed overnight. Now these took about 6 to 10 hours. So if we see that, for example, this one has less material to it, this one has more. And so one takes a lot longer than the other one to print. So this is kind of the fun part too. So now we get to see how these are going to form the base of our Terracotta Warrior. And I guess from memory, these are the tips of the feet. So the base would be comprised of 9 pieces, and we have 8 of them. Apparently, the one we did not print yet is the centerpiece, which will go in the center. But there are still some things we can do to begin our process. So this is a 3D printed pen, 3D printing pen, and what we're going to do is, well, first of all, we'll take that one piece that kind of fell apart. Because if we can fix this, we can fix anything. So this is a good example of how this 3D printing will work. So what this does, it combines the pieces together, and also we're going to add some strength and structure to our pieces. So the key here is to make things nice and level. And at first I'm kind of introducing a tack welding, kind of like spot weld them before going down all of the seams for extra strength. But for now we want to see that the pieces are fitting nicely. So here we can see that we've got some lapses or maybe even an error in the printing. I'm not exactly sure why it does that, but it's kind of flimsy. And this is why, see here, it's nice and flat and sturdy. And this is another reason why we do this step here. So we can have fun with this. It doesn't have to be perfect. One good thing about the way we pick our projects, so far I've been building dinosaur bones or a terracotta warrior. Both of those things, the original artifacts, were buried in the ground for thousands or even millions of years. So this makes it so that when we have an imperfection or happy accident, in the famous words of Bob Ross, it makes it perfectly okay. In fact, if what we made was too perfect, then it might even look kind of fake. So now these imperfections we can write off as being buried for thousands or millions of years. So there isn't too much more we can do until we get that centerpiece printed out. So let's go back to the computer and set up our next printing run, the next 8 pieces, which will include the final one from this base, and then start working up with the legs. Okay, we are back live at the computer center. So here's our computer version of what we just 3D printed and used the 3D ink, the 3D pen on, and what we didn't have was this centerpiece. So this is where it's important to keep track of what we're doing. So here we can see that we have the first 8 parts, and there's one here that we hadn't named yet, so we're going to call that number 9. See, we could get right to it because we hadn't labeled it yet, and so this is important when we keep track of what we're doing. And so now we're going to save that like we did before. Export mesh body, call that 9. So that'll be ready to be printed. But now we can begin our next cuts. So let's go and see what this looks like. And like before, we're going to take our plane here, make that, turn it perpendicular, or perpendicular. It's nice and flat. Okay, move it. Go to about 235, and it shouldn't be as high as last time. Interesting. Okay. Enter, cut. So once you get good at this, it doesn't take as long. We're cutting our part. Now it looks more like where it should be. And we'll make the top disappear. We can make our bottom parts disappear too. And then our plane, we're going to give it the old 90 degree. Okay. Move that to our edge. And the reason we do that is now we're going to measure out and figure out the best way to cut this. So the total width is 500 something, and 220 millimeters is the width of our printing area. So again, this is going to be a 3-part, and we don't have to be super accurate here. So let's go ahead and cut this. Boop. Boop. Cut. Okay, I wonder how this is going to pan out for, so 90 degrees, and move it to the edge. And for this one, our total distance is 348. So this tells me that we might be able to get away with just 2 cuts on that, if you follow what I'm saying. Because halfway is about 170. So this is where we can make some good progress doing it by hand versus using a program to figure this out for us. Because the program might have made it into 3, and then we'd have like a really tiny piece which we don't need, and it would use up a printer. But in this case, we're going to be super efficient by making only 6 pieces out of this. And let's do that real quick right now. And let's remember that once we have 3 pieces here, they each individually need to be cut by our plane. And that's how we can do that. And my final cut. All right, now we're going to name them. So we have a choice to make now, because we've got 6 pieces from today's cuts plus the one from before. That's 7. So we'd be using only 7 of our 8 printers if we went ahead and did it. So if I was in a super big hurry and by myself and not making videos, I'd probably go ahead and do one more cut and get one more piece out of the next stage that we see here. But in this case, we're just going to make 7 so we can move on and have some nice clean continuation. Great, so the next step is we're going to, so now we've got 9 through 15 that we're going to export. Right, nice and fast. Now we go to our other program called Cura, where we open up, let's say number 9 here. This is our missing piece. Click once on it, Control R, which puts it right onto our, oh, this is a long piece, 14 hours. Nice. That is a very big piece. And we're gonna export that to, so we've got our 8 little mini cards laid out in front of us here. So number 1 is going to be our big long part. And the way I like to do it is to open it up in this screen, erase what was on it from before. And remember, we need the G-code file, and then we see it appear there, and so we're good to go. So in this case, we're seeing this is our leg piece, and we see that there's like an arch here. We're gonna actually flip this upside down using this method here, where we're picking this edge to be the bottom edge. It feels better that way. This way we don't have an arch to print, and voila, another long print at 12 hours. Export. Okay, that was it. Now we've got our little cards, 1 through 7, and let's take these to our printers.